Okay, welcome to another Erudite Institute tutorials. Today we'll be looking at the circulatory system. We'll be looking at the heart and the various vessels that are attached to the heart, and then how blood is circulated through the body. The circulatory system is also called the cardiovascular system. Now, it is an organ system that permits blood to circulate and transport nutrients. Now, functions of the circulatory system. Now, it is involved in transportation of nutrients, oxygen, carbon dioxide, hormones to other body parts. It also helps in fighting diseases. Now, the circulatory system or the flow of blood helps in the stabilization of temperature of the body, and then the pH level, that is the acidity level of the blood. It also helps in maintaining homeostasis. That is, when we say homeostasis, a state of uniformity in the activities of the various organs in the body. Now, the circulatory system involves a whole lot of parts. Okay, and then this is a detailed diagram showing the various parts of the circulatory system. But we are not going to focus so much on that. We will focus on some specific aspects. We will be more focused on some specific aspects. Now, the heart. The heart is the main organ of the circulatory system. The heart is the main organ of the circulatory system. It is responsible for pumping blood to all areas of the circulatory system. If we should look at from the top left corner, we have what we call the superior vena cava. Then beneath the bottom of it, we have the inferior vena cava. Now we also have what we call the tricuspid valve. We have the pulmonic valve and the pulmonary veins. We also have what we call the pulmonary arteries. Okay, now there is a contradiction in the name of in the sense that veins and arteries in the heart, they perform the opposite functions that they perform in the body. What veins are supposed to do in the body is to carry deoxygenated blood, or blood that has low concentration of oxygen. But in the heart, the veins rather carry oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart. And what the arteries actually do is they carry deoxygenated blood to the lungs and so on. Okay. All right. Now, the heart is the center of the circulatory system. The heart pumps blood through the blood vessels of the circulatory system. The heart is situated in the medial tenon, and then the largest part of the heart is usually on the left side of the human body. Now, this is a pure diagram of the heart. The blue section indicates the part of the heart where deoxygenated blood flows into the heart, and then the red section indicates where oxygenated blood fills. Now, from this side, we have the superior vena cava. This is a simplified diagram. The superior vena cava. Beneath it, we have the inferior vena cava. Now, we have the right atrium, and then we have the left atrium. Atriums are the upper parts of the heart. Okay, atrium, they are the upper chambers of the heart. Now, in the lower parts, or beneath the right atrium, we have the right ventricle. And beneath the left atrium, we have the left ventricle. So ventricles are below. So atriums start with A in alphabetical order. They are ahead of V. So atriums are ahead, and then the ventricles are below. We keep that in mind. Now we also have what we call the aorta. Here. Then we have the pulmonary arteries. Then we have the pulmonary veins. Then we have the left atrium. And then we have the right atrium. When you hear anything of pulmonary, they are talking about arteries and veins that connect the heart to the lungs. Arteries and veins that connect the heart to the lungs. Now, arteries. Arteries are blood vessels that carry blood away from the heart. Okay, arteries have a higher blood pressure than any portion of the circulatory system. Okay, so because the arteries have to pump blood around the body, they are very muscular, they are thicker than veins and then the other circulatory vessels. Now, if you look at this part, arteries are supposed to carry blood away from the heart, meaning that arteries are supposed to carry oxygenated blood. But keep in mind that when we talk about pulmonary arteries here, the pulmonary artery we have here, okay, it does not carry oxygenated blood. It carries deoxygenated blood, or blood that does not contain enough oxygen. Why? It is carrying this blood to the lungs. Then the oxygen in the lungs are going to be diffused into the blood, and they come back through the pulmonary vein into the heart, and then it is pumped out through the aorta and then other vessels. Now we also have what we call capillaries. Capillaries are the smallest type of blood vessels. They are only one cell layer thick, meaning that they are very thin. Now, they only allow water, nutrient, and some waste substances to pass through them. They allow water and nutrient to enter into the bloodstream, and then they allow these waste substances to go out of the bloodstream through the lymph system and then other mechanisms in the body. Now, this is a typical diagram of arteries. Now, arteries are like the joints between veins. The capillaries are the joint between veins and then arteries. As we can see, we have arteries here. Then we have the arteriole, that is where the arteries subdivide into capillaries. Then we have veins here. Then we have what we call the venule. Okay, it is also the joint on the veins where it subdivides into capillaries. So here, the arteries that were containing oxygen-rich blood, okay, release in this region, around this region, they release the oxygen for the various tissues in the body in order for the various tissues to get oxygen for respiration to occur. And then after it has lost the oxygen in the blood, the oxygen begins to flow into what we call the veins. The veins are not as muscular as the arteries are. The veins we have here, they are not as muscular as the arteries are, and as a result of that, they are bigger, they contain less pressure, and then the mechanism that takes blood from the vein is the heart. Okay, anytime the heart pumps, it sucks blood from the vein, so they don't really have to be muscular to pump blood, but the arteries need to carry blood to various parts of the body. Now we also have what we call the ventricles. Like I said, the ventricles are the lower part of the heart. They are the lower chambers in the heart. Now, a chamber where the blood is being expelled from the heart, that is for our ventricles. In our ventricles, blood is pushed out of the heart. Now, it has thick walls because of the job it has to do. Okay, it has to push things out, so it has thick walls which are very muscular. And then we also have what we call interventricular septum, which is a stout wall that separates the left and then the right ventricle. Now, the ventricles are also they also contain what we call papillary muscles, and these are muscles that are located in the ventricles of the heart. We have 5 papillary muscles, 3 in the right and 2 in the left. This prevents the flow back of blood into the atrial cavities. Now, looking at the heart here, we have the aortic valve. All valves are mechanisms in the heart that close in order to prevent blood from flowing back into the heart. So if you look at what we have here, there are so many valves here. We have a valve here, we have valves here, we have valves. There are also valves here. Okay, and like I said earlier on, if you look at the direction of the blood flow, anytime blood flows in this direction, okay, it forces it to open. Then afterwards, if the blood should try to flow back, it is going to cause the valve to close, and at the end of the day, blood is not allowed to flow back. Anytime blood flows back in the direction it's supposed to move, or flows against the direction it's supposed to move, it is going to cause complications in the heart. So we have the aortic semilunar valve, then we have the tricuspid valve, which is between the the left atrium and then ventricle. Okay, then we have the bicuspid valve, which is also between the right atrium and then ventricle. So let's keep that information in mind. Now the heart valves, they allow blood to flow in one direction through the heart. They are situated around the cardiac skeleton. Now the heart valves, we have what we call the mitral or the bicuspid valve. It is a dual flap valve in the heart that lies between the left atrium and the left ventricle. It closes during atrial contraction. That is, anytime the atrium try to pump out blood, okay, it closes, and then when it is the need for it to relax to accept blood, it opens up. Okay, now the heart valves, we also have what we call the tricuspid valve. It is found between the right atrium and then the right ventricle. It prevents flow of blood back into the right atrium. So this is the top view of the heart. Okay, so we have the right atrium, the right ventricle. Blood flows in this direction, so it closes and prevents blood from moving back. Okay, it prevents blood from moving back. Then we have the right ventricle, and then we have the right atrium. Blood also flows in this direction, okay, and then it prevents blood from moving in the opposite direction. Now these are the layers of the heart. The heart is basically in three layers. The heart is basically in three layers. We have the pericardium, that is the outer layer of fibrous tissues. Then we have the myocardium, which is the middle layer of thick muscles. Then we have the endocardium, which is the inner layer of epithelial cells. Now veins, we are looking at the various vessels that are attached to the heart. The veins are blood vessels that carry blood towards the heart. They are less muscular than the arteries. Now the veins, we have the superior vena cava. It is a vein. It returns deoxygenated blood from the systemic circulation to the right atrium of the heart. It is 24 millimeters in length. Now the veins also include the inferior vena cava, which also carries deoxygenated blood from the lower and middle body into the right atrium of the heart. So all the veins, whether superior vena cava or whether there's inferior vena cava, they all carry blood to the right atrium of the heart. So the right atrium is where blood is received, deoxygenated blood is received. In the right atrium, that is where deoxygenated blood is received. Then it moves into the right ventricle, from the right ventricle straight to the lungs, back into the left ventricle, into the left atrium, and then to the various parts of the body. Now the veins, we have what you call valvular veins, and then these are veins that bring deoxygenated blood from the head back to the heart through the superior vena cava. Now veins, we have what we call pulmonary veins, veins that carry blood containing oxygen. So anytime you hear pulmonary veins, pulmonary, I've told you pulmonary veins are related to the lungs. Anytime you hear the word pulmonary, they are vessels related to the heart. So if you hear pulmonary veins, instead of carrying the oxygenated blood, pulmonary veins carry oxygenated blood. Keep that in mind. And then the blood, it is a fluid that delivers necessary substances to the cells and transport metabolic waste product away from the cells. The functions of the blood: it supplies oxygen to the tissues, it supplies nutrients, it helps in the removal of waste such as carbon dioxide and lactic acid, it helps in the detection of antibodies, and then it helps transport hormones to various parts of the body. It also helps to regulate blood acidity level or the body's pH, and then it also helps in the regulation of the core body temperature. Now, blood plasma. When you say blood plasma, it is a pale yellowish color liquid, and it is part of the blood, and then it normally holds the blood cells in whole. Okay, it holds the blood cells in suspension. Now, it protects the body from what we call infections. Okay, there are various infections that it protects us from. Now, the blood plasma contains useful things such as carbon dioxide, glucose, amino acid, protein, vitamins, and then hormones. Okay, so let's keep that in mind. Now, this example of the various components, some components of the blood. We have the red blood cells, which is also known as erythrocytes. Then we have the white blood cells, which is the defensive mechanism, and it is called leukocyte. And then we have the platelet, which is referred to as what? Thrombocyte. Now, this is an artery. Okay, the artery this is an artery showing the various components of the blood. Okay, there are other components like water, oxygen, nutrients, so on and so forth. Now, this is also emphasizing on the three major components of the blood. Now, red blood cells, they are also called erythrocytes. Most common type of blood cells, that is what they are, the major part of the blood cells. They are also referred to as hemoglobin. That is an ion containing biomolecule, and it is responsible for the red color of the cell. Now, it doesn't have a nucleus. The red blood cells don't have nucleus, but then it is very flexible. And we also have white blood cells, which are also known as leukocytes. Now, they are the major part of the immune system. Okay, the immune system, you will get to learn about the lymphatic system, but when you say white blood cells, they are the major part of the immune system. Now, it helps to defend the body from foreign bodies, that is harmful living organisms that find their way, micro living organisms that find their way into the body, like bacteria, viruses, and so other forms. Now, the white blood cells has a nucleus, so anytime it determines another organism that has a different DNA from what the body already has, it tends to attack it. That is what causes blood clotting. Sometimes when viruses, when some vaccines are introduced into the body, and then they tend to dictate something different from what the DNA or the nucleus in the white blood cells are functioning for. They tend to attack it, and then it causes blood clotting. It also occurs when blood transfusion is taken in, so the victim would have to take suppressors in order to suppress the DNA of the foreign blood cells. Now, when we say white blood cells, there are two types. We have the neutrophil, which are most common type of the immune system. They defend the body against bacteria and fungi. Now, we have the eosinophil, which also controls mechanisms associated with allergy and asthma. It defends the body from larger parasites. So this is a typical picture of the white blood cells. Now, the red and then the white blood cells. Now, we have the platelet, also called as the thrombocyte. Its function is to stop bleeding by clamping and clotting blood vessels injuries. Okay, it also doesn't have any nucleus. So among the three particles, okay, that make up the blood cells, it is only the white blood cells that contains a nucleus. That doesn't mean the rest lack DNA. Now, platelets, it is also triggered when the collagen from the subendothelium binds with its receptors on the platelet. Now this is a typical example of what platelets in activity. Now direction of blood flow. Now we have oxygen rich blood, which is in red, then oxygen poor blood, which is blue. So we have what we call the superior vena cava, we have the inferior vena cava. Okay, they are the parts of the heart where the oxygenated blood enters. The superior is blood from the head. The superior we have here is blood from the middle section of the body, and then the superior vena cava is from the upper parts of the heart. Now, as we can see here, there are also other parts here where the oxygenated blood are moving. But it makes sense that this is where the oxygenated blood enters the body. Okay, this is where the oxygenated blood enters the body, these three sections. Now, we also have the oxygenated blood leaving the heart here. They are not going into the body, they are going into the lungs, so that oxygen is diffused into the lungs. So here we have the pulmonary artery here, and over here we have the pulmonary vein. So to be precise, this is how the movement of blood goes. From the body, it enters the heart through the vena cava, whether the inferior and then the superior. Then they are introduced into the right atrium. From the right atrium to the right ventricle, then they move through the pulmonary artery to the lungs. From the lungs, they enter through the pulmonary veins into the left ventricle. Then from the left ventricle, they move into the right atrium. Then from the right atrium, they pass through the aorta to various parts of the body. Okay, so first we have the vena cava. Okay, first we have the vena cava, whether superior or inferior. Then we have the atrium, that is the right atrium. Then from the right atrium to the right ventricle, from the right ventricle to the lungs, from the lungs to the left ventricle, from the left ventricle to the left atrium, then to the aorta, and then to other parts of the body. Now this is the systematic flow of an image showing the systematic flow of blood. Diagram showing the systematic circulation of blood to the various parts of the body. So the systematic circulation delivers blood to all body cells, and then it carries away waste. Now pulmonary circulation eliminates carbon dioxide and oxygen, and then oxygenates blood, that is through the lung pathway. So here the diagram tells us that the red shows what vessels transporting oxygenated blood, then the blue shows us vessels transporting the oxygenated blood, and then where we have the violet indicate where there is what gas exchange, that is where oxygen is exchanged for carbon dioxide in the tissues. Now pathways of the blood from the superior cava and then from the from the superior cava, and then from the right atrium, from the superior cava, passing through the right atrium, the tricuspid valve, and then the right ventricle. It moves through the pulmonary semilunar valve, through the right and left pulmonary veins, pulmonary artery, through the pulmonary artery. Then it goes to the lungs. Then from the lungs, it moves to the pulmonary veins, to the left ventricle, through the bicuspid valve. Then it moves to the left ventricle, through the aortic seminary valve, passes through the aorta, and then to the parts of the bodies. Okay, so basically this is the direction in which blood moves. So we can say that it moves from the body. It enters the heart through the superior and then the inferior vena cava to the right atrium. Then it moves to passes through the tricuspid valve into the right ventricle. Then it moves through the pulmonary semilunar valve. Okay, then it moves to the right and then left pulmonary artery. Then it goes to the lungs to receive oxygen. Then from the lungs, it passes through the pulmonary vein. Okay, it passes through the pulmonary vein back into the heart through the left atrium. Then through the bicuspid valve, it passes through the left ventricle. Then it goes through the aortic semilunar valve into the aorta, into the other part of the body. Now from this side, the blood is carried into the heart, into the superior vena cava by a vein. Okay, by a vein. So let's keep that in mind. And then it leaves here via an artery. Okay, an artery. It leaves the heart through arteries. Oxygenated blood leaves the heart through arteries. Alright, so that is that for our lesson today. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to share and help others to learn.